Scoring and colors play an important role in spider impact. In the new alerts section, I immediately see the impact of colors. The first alert shown is highlighting a red value for the total gross profit measure for the month of June. If I click on it to investigate, I get down to a detailed view where I can see coloring being displayed in a number of areas. In the actual and threshold value section, I see a red colored circle and normalized score for the month of June. In the speedometer in the top left, I see it is in the red. Right above that, I see a red colored rectangle, illustrating that the actual value of 100,000 is down 150,000 from the prior month. This must mean that if I toggle back to May, the actual should be 250,000, and it is, so I'll return to June. In the chart in the top right, I see a red colored circle for June. I also see that June is the only month within the entire last year that is operating in the red. Every other month is in yellow or green. If I look at the Measures tab in the top left, I see there is a red alert because the month's actual is in the red. If I toggle back to May, the alert goes away. I'll toggle back to June and click on the Measures tab. I see there are color indicators in the top left corner of every month. If I hover over the name or any one of the numbers, the entire row is highlighted in that color, making it stand out even more. I'll now return to the Overview tab. In the secondary navigation pane on the left, I see colors appearing throughout the scorecard hierarchy. Without having to click on a different item, I can see that the top level is in yellow for the month, while the financial perspective is in red. I can see that the increased revenue objective is in yellow, and if I expand it, I can see why. One of its measures is in green, one of the measures is in yellow, and one of the measures is in red. I'll collapse that objective again and focus in on total gross profit. Because that measure is active on screen, I'm seeing a red color visual in two places, to the left of the measure name and to the right. If I select a different measure like product revenue, I see that the measure now has two colors showing in green, while the red to the left of total gross profit has turned gray since it is no longer active on screen. Next, I'd like to return to the home page, and we'll take a look at the impact of coloring in other areas of the product. If I click on my measures, I'll see just for the measures I am owner for, a colorized view of performance for June 2020 on the left. At the top, there are green, yellow, red, and gray filters that allow me to focus in on a particular area. If I click red, I'll see just those measures, and if I click again, I'll return to all measures. Next, I'll return to the welcome page by clicking on it, and then select Measure Updates. And this will allow me to see just the measures that I'm responsible for updating. If my measures have been updated in the top left of the period column, I can see a color indicator showing my performance for that month. If I hover over the measure name or the period, the coloring expands to the entire cell. I'll click on Welcome once again, and then click on My Tasks. Just like with measures, I have color indicators for each task on the top left. I have colored filters where I can focus in on maybe just my red tasks by clicking on it and then clicking again to show all tasks. I'll go back to the welcome page and now take a look at the impact of coloring in the presentation section. Strategy maps, dashboards, charts and reports, and briefings. Now, to do this all at one time, I'll select briefings. And I'll also switch to mobile world. I see that a briefing called monthly staff meeting is already enabled here. And it contains a collection of all the objects that are shown under presentation. On the first page of the briefing is the key measure history dashboard. Thanks to coloring, I can quickly see in the speedometers that all 4 are in yellow for the month. If I focus on the top 2 charts, I can quickly surmise that for the past couple years here, no month was in the red. The third chart, however, 6 months are in red. If I skip to page 5 of the briefing, let's take a look at the mobile world strategy map. You can see that for my 12 objectives, 6 are performing well in the green, 4 are doing okay in the yellow, and 2 are performing poorly in red. I can also see colorized trend hours to the period prior, help me to pinpoint things even further. Of the 2 red objectives, increased revenue is the biggest concern since it is trending down from May. If I skip to page 6 of the briefing, I can see the color impact in the sales report. Thanks to color, I've already got a handle on which of the measures I need to focus on. Training sales revenue has 10 months that are of concern in red. Okay, with that, I'd like to take a step all the way back and discuss the concept of normalized scoring in Spider Impact. To help illustrate this, I'm going to select scorecards and then select the demo org. I'll then expand examples and scoring types, and I'll select the measure I've named goal and red flag. Measures and their associated normalized scores are the foundation of how performance is tracked and presented. Spider Impact assigns a normalized score between 0 and 10 based on a measure's actual value, thresholds, and scoring type. It provides 11 different scoring types, allowing for many options for associating actual performance with normalized scores. If I select Edit at the bottom, and select scoring type, I'll see each of the options here. I'll just scroll down and just work my way up. I'll then select Done. I've put together an example of each one of those scoring types, and I'll highlight some of the key differences. I'll start with the most popular one, which is goal and red flag, which is already selected here. If I set the red flag to 500 and have an actual of 500, as is the case here, I know that will be the point it turns red, and a normalized score of 3.33. Conversely, if I have a goal of 800 and have an actual of 800, and I'll just change that value quickly here and click Save, I know that will be the point it turns green and have a score of 6.67. To determine the points at which 0 and 10 are hit, Spider Impact calculates the difference between the red flag and goal, which in this case is 300, and then subtracts or adds that value to determine the endpoints. For instance, if I have an actual value of 200, which is 300 less than the red flag, again, I'll enter that value and click Save here. That is the point it hits 0 as far as the normalized score, effectively the worst value. Conversely, if I have an actual of 1100, which is 300 more than the goal, that is the point I reach a normalized score of 10, effectively the best value. Okay, moving on to 3-color scoring. This option provides more control over defining the best and worst values. Instead of having best and worst auto-assigned, I have the ability to set whatever I want for them. In this case, maybe 0 and 1500. For example, if I had an actual value of 200, whereas the score was 0 in the goal red flag model, it now has a normalized score of 1.33. Only at an actual of 0 will I have a score of 0. And I'll just quickly show that. Moving on to goal-only scoring. This option requires only that a goal value be set and a determination if higher values are better. And to show where that is, I'll click Edit in the bottom. If that is set to yes, and I'm at the goal or above, I'll be in the green with a score of 10. And I'll just prove that out by clicking Done here. If I change the value to something less than the goal value, and I'll just change this to 795, we'll see even with that minor change there, I'm now in the red in a normalized score all the way down to 0. Moving on to yes/no scoring. This option is very similar to goal only, but does not require a goal. I also need to make the determination if yes is good or not. And once again, I'll click Edit to show that. And I'll click Done to go back. If it is set to yes and the actual for the period is no, as we see here, I'll be in the red and have a score of 0. However, if the actual is set to yes, notice that I'm now in the green and have a score of 10. Moving on to 2-color scoring. This option allows for the setting of best and worst values along with the goal. There is no red flag. Anything at or above the goal is in green, while anything below the goal is red. There is no yellow. Moving on to 4-color blue. This option requires 5 threshold points: worst, red, goal, reach out, and best. A value at each of the threshold points will generate scores of 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, and 10 respectively. For example, as shown here, an actual of 1200 that equals the reach out will be in blue with a normalized score of 7.5. Moving on to 4-color orange, this option is very similar to 4-color blue, except the reach out point is replaced with the warning point. For example, an actual that is equal to the warning value, in this case 650, we'll see that we'll have the orange coloring with a score of 5. Moving on to 4-color scored middle. This option requires 3 thresholds: red flag, yellow flag, and goal. Colors range from red to yellow to light green and then to dark green. Moving on to 2-color stabilize. This option requires 5 thresholds: low worst, low target, best, high target, and high worst. In this model, scores go from red to green and then back to red. Moving on to 3-color stabilize. This option requires 7 thresholds: low worst, low red flag, low target, best, high target, high red flag, and high worst. Low red flag and high red flag are 2 additional items required for this one. In this model, scores go from red to yellow to green and then back to yellow and red. Last but not least is the unscored option. This option requires no thresholds and will have no impact on scoring whatsoever. Its purpose is simply for tracking purposes. For instance, a total revenue measure that allows the summing of all your revenue measures and have that visible in one location, but not actually influence the colorized score. The last item I'd like to review is how scores are rolled up a scorecard hierarchy. Once measures have been scored, parent objects like objectives and perspectives get their score via a weighted average of the scores of the objects directly beneath them. For example, I'll select Normalized Scoring here. By default, Spider Impact assigns an equal weight to each measure. If I had just these two measures and the score for total gross profit was 0 and the score for employee satisfaction was 10, it sums those two up, divides by 2, and produces a score of 5. Places it in yellow at the parent level here. However, the weight can be customized, and to show that, I'll click on Total Gross Profit. I'll click Edit at the bottom, and I'll click on Weight. And I'll change that value from 1 to maybe 3. I'll then click Save, and then click Done. If I click on the parent, I now see that it is also in red with a score that has dropped from 5 to 2.5. And note that in some cases you might need to click refresh to have the scoring come across here. Lastly, the treatment of nulls also plays a big impact on the color. For example, if I expand the null example, I see that total gross profit is in yellow and employee satisfaction is gray because an actual value has not yet been provided for employee satisfaction. Although each measure was actually assigned an equal weight of 50, if only one has an actual, as we see in this case, the null measure will display a weight of 0. I'm also provided with a tooltip explaining why, and I can hover over the 0% in this case. If I go back to May, when both measures had an actual, I'll see the equal weight of 50. And I'll switch back to June. One thing to note is that in Application Administration, and I'll select Settings and go to that option here. There is an option called Ignore Gray Scorecard Items for Color Rollup. And if that was set to no, the parent objective would switch from yellow to gray and would remain that way until all the measures it contains have been populated. However, I prefer the existing behavior, so I'll just leave this as is.